Motion elements. Motion elements.
Hey everybody, my name is Dr. Isaac Balbin, and I've been hearing a lot about 5G. As it so happens, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm actually a doctor of electrical engineering. And what that means is I have a very good understanding of how radio communications work, that being the subject of my PhD. Now, there's a lot of people that have come to me recently and they've asked me, what's up with this 5G? Is it dangerous? Is it a risk? What's the go? And for the most part, I find that these people are coming to me with extraordinary bits of disinformation and speculation that any radio engineer could tell you is demonstrably false. So let's go back a little bit. What is 5G? 5G just means the 5th generation mobile network. Alright? It's the new standard for how all of the mobile devices that we use when we carry around are going to communicate with each other. And one of the cool things in there is, in this new 5th generation concept, we're going beyond just mobile phones and data transmission to a whole host of IoT devices and new applications that previously wouldn't have been possible because the capacity to communicate wasn't there. So 5G is actually really exciting. Now, what's the difference between 5G and 4G? Well, I'm not going to get into the technical side of all of this. If anyone wants to, the standards for what define 4G and 5G are available online. Read them at your leisure, but they may be a little complex. So, at a fundamental level, when we're talking about 5G, all we're talking about is a radio communication standard that lets us pack in more data that we can transmit faster. Now, how do we do that? There's a lot of really cool stuff in there, but fundamentally, the main way we do it is by operating the whole system at a higher frequency. At a higher frequency, the signal's got a little bit more energy, and we can therefore pack more data in there. That's it. Now, older radio networks, they would use frequencies like 2.4 gigahertz, 5.8 gigahertz. I'm sure a lot of people out there have seen these numbers on the side of boxes when they go buy Wi-Fi routers and things of the like. And even 900 megahertz was a very popular frequency to use. But as I was explaining before, when we go up in frequency, we can pack in more data, and that's a good thing. Now, 5G uses radiation. Does that make it dangerous? Okay. So 5G does use radiation, but radiation is simply light. Now, it is light that is operating at a different frequency to the light that we call light, the visible portion of the radio spectrum. But they fundamentally are exactly the same thing. Just because this type of light interacts with our eyes and this type of light doesn't mean that there's something different. Now, as I'm hoping most of you know, all light travels at the same speed in a vacuum. Yes, it changes a little bit in different mediums, but let's not worry about that for now. Now, sometimes these individual bits of light, because we can break light down to these little bits, they're called photons. And these photons, they can have more energy and they can have less energy. The higher frequency light has more energy per photon, and the lower frequency light has less energy per photon. High energy light can be dangerous, and we know that. There are things like X-rays and beta rays and gamma rays, and everybody's well aware that they can be very, very dangerous, and we take appropriate precautions when we're utilizing them. no problem. But 5G is using low energy light. This is light that has a lower energy in each photon than that normal light that we used to see with. Well, what if there is a lot of low energy light? Let me answer this with a little bit of a story. Imagine yourself sitting in a room and somebody shines a torch at you. And I mean, I'm not saying that they shine it at your eyes. Let's say they shine a torch at your back. Is that dangerous? Obviously not. Well, what if they shined 5,000 torches at you? Again, not in your eyes. Is that dangerous? Again, obviously not. So why would you be worried that light that has a lower energy than the light that is visible, why would you be worried that this is dangerous even if it's there at high intensity? Look, there are a lot of unknowns and there's a lot of speculation that we can make. And for example, for a long time people thought mobile phones can give you cancer. But this idea has been debunked by a number of scientific studies. Now, it's not that it is completely impossible for low energy light to be harmful for you. But if you're going to tell us that it is harmful, well, you need to be able to show us an example of it being harmful. You need to be able to tell us why this is being harmful. Sometimes there's a good reason, like for example, a particular molecule that might be required in our body might be sensitive to a very, very narrow band of light, which may happen to fall in the 5G spectrum that's being used. It's possible. But if you can't prove it, if you can't show it, well, then it's not real. Now, here's the other thing to think about. Is this even new for us to communicate at higher frequencies? I mean, listen, we didn't start doing this yesterday. Communication at tens of megahertz has been happening for a long time. In the US, for example, there's a band between 36 and 40 gigahertz that is licensed for high-speed microwave data links. And there's a band at 60 gigahertz, which can be used for unlicensed short range meaning less than 1.7 kilometers, data links with very high data throughput. And we can even go beyond that, and there are, in the 70 gigahertz and the 80 gigahertz and the 90 gigahertz radio bands that are also used for point-to-point high bandwidth links. And because these higher frequencies, so at 60 gigahertz, it's a very secure channel because the signal dies very quickly in the air, whereas at these other frequencies, the oxygen absorption band at 60 gigahertz doesn't exist, but you need a license to be able to transmit at these frequencies from the FCC if you want to do it in the US. Now there's even higher frequency bands that we could talk about, but I think you take my point here. And by the way, even Wi-Fi is going to start working at 60 gigahertz in not too long. Now, another thing that people get worried about, before we used to have a single base station that was very, very big, and it transmitted signal at very high power, and it could send those signals a really long way. Now, when we're going up in frequency, the distance we can send these signals goes down. So we could try to just pump up the power at those base stations, but that's going to make things unsafe. We don't want to ever do that. So what do we do instead? We break it up and we put lots of little base stations all around the place, and therefore each of these base stations doesn't have to work, can work at a lower power level because it doesn't have to communicate as far because there are more of them in this network. So people, I understand, would be fearful if there was a an old style mobile communication base station tower in their home or right next to it. But with 5G, it's a significantly lower concern. And even, some of the Wi-Fi routers out there transmit a higher energy density than some of the 5G base stations. And by the way, one other thing I want to point out, those police radar guns that tell you that you've been driving faster than you should have? They work up at 30 gigahertz as well. I didn't hear anybody complain about those. So, let's say some other things that we can definitively say. 5G is not spreading the coronavirus. This is preposterous. I can't even put myself in a frame of mind where I can understand how someone can accept such ludicrous information. I would also suggest that when people have an issue with something that is new, that they don't understand, and which dangerous or concerning claims are being made, one of the things that you can do is you can try to find your expert that you're going to try to talk to more often. But I mean, let's be honest, that's becoming more and more difficult these days. There are many charlatans out there, and if you are not educated in a particular field of expertise, how are you going to make that determination? And it's a very difficult thing to deal with. And there aren't any good answers. So the best thing that you can actually do is to get educated for yourself. Because when you can understand these things on your own, then nobody can fool you. So I hope that a few people are a little bit less concerned about 5G based on what I've spoken about, and that you found this video useful. Thank you very much.